In this episode of Voice of the Sea, we're on Hawaii Island, along the stretch of coastline known as Keaukaha, learning about Loko Iʻa, traditional Hawaiian fish ponds, and the partnerships that make the Loko Iʻa in the district of Hilo so successful. We visit with community organization founders, educators, and a communications officer, all taking on cultural responsibility to steward these special places.
We're facing Hilo town here, and our two maunas, Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, the two mountains that feed this coastline with all of the fresh water that contributes to the coastlines here. Hilo is known for many loko iʻa, numerous of loko iʻa. So we're actually in the ahupua'a of Waiakea, and Waiakea is defined as broad waters. Akea is like wide and broad and vast, and Vai is fresh water, so it's talking about all of that fresh water. A lot of the water is groundwater. When we say Waiakea, it might not only be speaking to just surface water, but how vast and how wide the water is underground. Without fresh water, loko iʻa do not exist, right? And to think about Waiakea and this place being a place with lots of water, it already opens the door to help you understand how many loko iʻa might be available in this area. This is Hui Hoʻoleimaluō's foundation. This is where we started. This is also where we grew up, all of us founders. There's three of us, Manoa, Johansen, Nāhōkū Kahana, and myself. We began to restore the loko iʻa here. And then when we were in college, there's scholarships and there's all of these different opportunities for school, and you have to do volunteer work. And so this is where we began to do our volunteer work as students. So we did various things, from rebuilding the rock walls and doing water quality, like measuring salinity and temperature and oxygen, doing volunteer work here. That grew into understanding more about this space and wanting to share. And so that turned into us reaching out to the different schools to see if they would want to come down as field trips to learn about the space, to learn about the different wahipana, and then to partake in the restoration and the cleaning of the space. And this is a county beach park, so we worked a lot with the county. In the beginning stages, we just jumped in, it was just like intuitive, we just jumped right in and we started cleaning it, because we said, there's potential here. We can raise fish. We see lots of rocks. Hale down the road is raising fish. We could do the same thing. So we started doing that, and eventually we started getting questions by some officials, and then we said, we better go in and talk to the county. And we talked to the county, and the way we approached it, we said, this is our home. We are going to take care of this place no matter what. We are responsible for this place, so we want to work with you and to figure out what are the things we need to do to maintain this relationship and maintain the relationship that we have with the space and the way that we're working towards, and working with kids and kids being here and us moving around rocks and being a part of the park's progress. And so our approach and the way that we're communicating with the community and how to care for the space, that was like priority number one. That's one thing that we learned from Kupuna, is that the fish pond is often a reflection of the community, and that's Hui Hoʻoleimaluō's vision, in a sense. Thriving communities through thriving ecosystems. If our ecosystems are thriving and healthy and they're cared for, then that is a reflection on the community that lives within those immediate areas, right? When we first started to take care of this loko iʻa, it was almost like taking care of our front yard, And I think these are things that Kupuna were doing naturally every day, right? Being out in the space and learning about the space and being so intimate with a place so that that place can care for you and you know how to care for that space. The word lawaiʻa, have you guys heard that word, lawaiʻa? So lawaiʻa is like a fisherman. People say that's like the literal translation. Lawaiʻa is a fisherman. But if you break up the word, right, lava means enough and iʻa is fish. So if you're a lawaiʻa, then you're someone who only takes enough fish, right? So it's not only the literal translations that make sense, right? It's about that word teaching you how to live that type of practice. Even like the makaha for the Loko Iʻa. The maka are the eyes, right? So it is the eyes of the fish pond. Ha is your breath, right? So breathing, and it speaks to the fish pond being able to breathe. And ha is also 4. So we know that there's 2 high tide and 2 low tides every day. So it breathes 4 times a day, right? Without that happening, then the pond cannot filter, it cannot clean, right? So the language really provides you the clues and provides you with a pathway and how to live sustainably in these systems, right? It really opens the door to understanding how kupuna lived. When you use the name, you're understanding what that place is telling you. You understand the meaning of that name because it unfolds the functions of that space. And so that lifestyle comes back to life.
I would just like to know about your role here.
I would say I'm a kiaʻi loko, and a kiaʻi loko is basically a fish pond caretaker. The fish pond doesn't only feed the fish that is in it, but it also feeds the plants and the birds and the animals that lived around the fish pond.
What does the caretaking involve?
The basic caretaking needs is water quality, the fish pond maintenance, so the different walls that we see around the pond, the plant life that grows around the pond, checking about the sediment in the water, the fish count.
Can you tell me about the history of this Loko Iʻa?
Yeah, Honokea Loko. Now people see it as this like small, about 1 acre fish pond with the rock wall. And the rock wall was built around the 1920s by Mr. Richardson. And the rock wall kind of solidified his property boundary. The wall today is built with cement. Honokea Loko, before what it is today, was taken care of by the malo ohana. And the malo ohana are the original caretakers of the fish pond. We say that Honokea Loko now is in phase 3 of what it's been through over time. We know that there was a fish pond wall about 30 yards or so from where the wall is now. That wall in the late 1800s, we like to say, was phase 2. And phase 1 of Honokea Loko, we're told that the wall was spanned the whole bay. So from point to islands to point. All of Waiuli, we're told at one point, it was the fish pond.
Is there other history or place names that you think are important for our viewers to know about?
Honokea, if we break that down, Hono means bay and Kea means white. So out in the bay, we're told that there was a significant amount of white sand, enough that it would have that name. Yeah, so if we know this area and most of this coastline, it's full of black sand. Honokea tells us that the reef system in this area was healthy enough that it would go through that whole process from polyp to full coral growth, and then all the way down to erosion and to create the sand. But with the revitalization of using the name, we see the sand coming back, and we like to see that correlation of using the name, using the function of the name, the aina is going to respond. Honokea sits in Waiuli, and Waiuli talks about the amount of fresh water, so vai. The amount of water can tell you how much people can live in this area, how much people can feed off of that resource. So Waiuli was a highly resourceful area to get water.
Do you have a goal or a dream for phase 4?
As we see, like through that progression, the fish pond came smaller and smaller. Now, I wouldn't want it to get even more smaller, but hopefully phase 4 is to a point where the fish pond itself can reach the full cycle of sustainability. You know, raising fish, observing the fish, maintaining the population to a point where people can come and harvest and eat from the fish pond. We haven't enacted that part yet of full harvest, so that's hopefully what phase 4 could be, yeah.
What needs to happen before you can reach that full cycle?
We're not at a point permit-wise. There's no process that's available to harvest and eat from a county area. Yeah. So maybe that's a process that we could create and give to other fish ponds that are in the same partnerships like we are.
The University of Hawaii's Sea Grant College program focused on Hawaii's coasts and its communities through sustainable development, safe seafood supply, sustainable coastal tourism, hazard resilience, and healthy coastal ecosystems. Hawaii's Sea Grant.
Hi,
You're watching Voice of the Sea. We're at Kaumaui, a 3-acre site in Keaukaha with many local vai, or freshwater ponds. In February 2021, Hui Hoʻoleimaluō began working with teachers and students to rehabilitate these community resources.
Aloha, my name is Sheri Frias. I am from Wailuku on the island of Maui. I currently live in Puna and I work in Keaukaha at ʻUmeke Kāʻeo. I am the intermediate and high school science kumu for ʻUmeke Kāʻeo. Our school is a Hawaiian immersion school. We're located in Keaukaha. Our big focus is using Keaukaha as our learning laboratory for our students, using our coastline, using our aina throughout Keaukaha as a place to learn. So our keiki and our haumana are connected to a space, and they are learning that they need to contribute to this space, and that this is a part of them as much as it is a part of us. And we're in the beginning stages of revitalizing this space. And so it's important for them to see what it looks like in ground zero. And it's important for them to see that the science that we do here, the cultural ceremonies that we do here, the knowledge that we learn is going to increase the value of this space for our community. And so it's important for us to have this pilina for our keiki. And it's important for us to have many different spaces to speak Hawaiian, because in the school, we're not necessarily using the vocabulary used to pass the rocks. We're not using the vocabulary on what type of rocks there are. We're not using the vocabulary on the specific names of where the function of the rock goes in. We're not using the vocabulary maybe for all the things to the Loko Iʻa. So it's important to take the olelo into a different space so that they can learn the vocabulary for these spaces. Some of the things that we've been working on is collecting water quality. We're starting to look at the oxygen levels. We're looking at salinity, we're looking at temperature, we're beginning to map the sediment levels, how much sediment is in certain areas so we can measure our progress over time. We're trying to uncover where are our punawai, our water sources coming from. We can't find them because they're covered in sediment. Something else we're trying to map is we have ama, which is our main fish supply for sustenance in these ponds. According to scientific ʻIke that I know of, there may be something else I'm not aware of, but our fish need 15 parts per thousand to reproduce, and as of right now, these loko are in 2 parts to 3 parts per thousand, in that range. So if so, we need to discover, are our ama actually adapting and reproducing here and we're unaware of, or are we having to stock our fish ponds? So that's something we're trying to figure out and we're trying to map. When we see these the rise of the tide, it's not ocean water, it's mostly punawai water. And we partner up with Sheri, and she's done extensive research on water. She can track where the elevation this water is coming from, how old this water is, where is our forest that we need to malama to make sure that the vai here is all good. And we're trying to see what we got in our loko, what kind of fish we got, what kind of little critters we got, bacteria perhaps, any kind. We're just really exploring this space.
Explain to me what the keiki were doing with the pohaku, the rocks.
So our keiki are hale-haleing these pohaku. We're building mala or garden beds to plant kalo and uala to use either at the ending of our year in our symposium when they present to their ohana their findings. And we also use various food for makahiki. While I was living on Maui, I have little to no information or background on Loko Iʻa. It wasn't until I moved to Hilo, where Hoʻoleimaluō has partnerships with the university, and so I started coming here as a student in the university. And then when I graduated and became a teacher, I already have that connection. I'm bringing my kids over here, and because we're in Keaukaha, Hoʻoleimaluō partners with a lot of other schools, and they partner with other kiaʻi that take care of other Loko Iʻa, and we compare all of our findings to try and make this coastline more productive, so that this can be something that we can use to feed our community in the way that it did before. And our kids need this space. Many of us don't have access to aina where they can plant, farm fish, farm plants, and so it's a win-win situation.
We are looking for a few heroes, mentors, trailblazers, innovators, a passion to change lives, spark curiosity, open hearts, and awaken minds, help students answer the question, who am I? This could be your calling, but this is no job. It's the journey of a lifetime. Be a hero. Be a teacher.
You're watching Voice of the Sea. We're at Hale Lono Loko Iʻa, which the Edith Kanakaʻole Foundation has managed since 1996. Talking with Communications Officer and kiaʻi, Luka Kanakaʻole.
Almost every system around the world, especially here in Hawaii, whether you're talking about a lo'i kalo or a Loko Iʻa, freshwater flow, constant freshwater flow is everything. Wherever you're going to find fresh water injecting inside of the coastline, those are going to be the priority spaces to kind of build your Loko Iʻa. Our kupuna saw how effective they are in growing algae, how effective they are in nurturing microorganisms, and how effective they are in securing smaller fish and acting as nurseries. They saw that natural phenomenon occurring, and they said, we can create our own estuaries. And thus came our Loko Iʻa system. The most common way is the kuapas, where we built the rock wall, or we mound kuaʻaina. We build a kuaʻaina to not stop the fresh water from going into the ocean. We always want that constant flow, but it's to just slow it down. By slowing it down, you allow the mixing of the fresh and the salt water, you allow the micronutrients to grow and allow that algae to grow, and you allow that all of those smells of that activity to recruit fish, to attract fish into this fish pond, and thus not only making the fish pond healthy and active and abundance full of fish, but also making the entire coastline surrounding the fish pond very, very healthy fishery. I look at it as a FAD, or a fish aggregation device, So, when you go out into the deep ocean, most people try and find floating objects or buoys. A lot of fish are going to be attracted to these objects in the deep sea. Well, the same thing can be said for these spaces. When you have a lot of activity that like a fish pond has, other fish are going to be attracted to that activity. You go into the reef system and you see a large coral head, and the activity inside the coral head attracts other fish to come near that coral head as well. So as long as that system is healthy and maintained, all these different fish are going to be attracted to that place. That system, or that phenomenon, has been observed by our ancestors and has actually been passed down through different stories. The story of Kuʻulakai, for example. Kuʻulakai is the man who created the first fish pond, and he had the ability to place a rock inside the water and chant fish towards it. People can say that, this man had magical powers to chant fish towards him. That's an amazing story that can be passed down easily. But if you analyze the story a little bit deeper, you realize that, we're all kuʻula. We create these rocks and we create that system in which fish can be aggregate towards. And that's the Loko Iʻa system. One challenge I would say that has been difficult to realize, and I think every fish pond is going to feel it, is that the water levels are constantly getting higher. We used to see king tides maybe once or twice a year. We're seeing it almost every month, every other month. And so our walls need to get higher, our walls need to get wider. Those are difficult challenges that not just us, but every fish pond practitioner is going to have to deal with across the Pai'aina. The knowledge we get from managing these systems, we can pass down, and we can hopefully adapt to whatever our natural resource gives us or whatever our environment gives us. So if the water ends up being up there, up Mauka, we can build a new Loko Iʻa up there and just adapt to our islands, and that's what our kupuna we're very good at. And we need to kind of get back to not just being scared of the changes, but just being ready for it. The primary use of this place is to kind of aid in our observational skills and our research methodology. And one of the primary research methodology that we do is papakumakawalu. To summarize, papakumakawalu is a method in which to analyze our resources and our environment and our universe through the scope of our kupuna. So we take chants, we take mele, and we take stories that our kupuna passed down. We dissect and analyze what they were observing. And by doing that, we can kind of reintroduce how we connect with our resources. We give life to our resources, we give language to our resources. Better to understand how we interact with them. Our primary responsibility here is just to maintain the health and the flow of this fish pond. What it attracts out there, it's not up to us. As cool as that would be. This larger fish pond has, all these myriad of reef fish. It's actually a quite colorful pond with all these types of sturgeons and parrotfish, and all these different populations of fish exist in this tiny little pond. We do harvest once a year out of this fish pond, and the things that we do harvest either goes to our hula halau kekuhi for their ceremony, and the rest goes to community members that has either helped out with the fish pond or helped with the harvest and helped maintain our fish pond, and kupuna as well that can't catch fish on their own.
You guys do a community work day every month?
Every month, yeah, we do a community work day every second Saturday of the month from 9 to 12. Anybody can follow us at Hale Lono or go to our website to kind of reserve their spot to come to the work day. I think like most fish ponds, we depend on our volunteers and we depend on our presence to maintain the health of this place. This place is real difficult to secure funding or whatnot. For me, I keep coming to this place because it is a kuleana. I grew up on this fish pond. The health of this fish pond has always been in my mind, and I don't feel comfortable being away from it for too long, and I need to constantly make sure this place is healthy. But it's one of those things where if you don't maintain it or you don't visit it enough and it turns into something else, will you regret it? I don't really want to know the answer to that. So it's more of a kuleana to this place.
The Loko Iʻa and Keaukaha give monthly updates to the Community Association, and you can tune in to learn more. Community is the backbone of successful Loko Iʻa, and partnerships that engage our local youth are essential for sustainability. Get involved in Loko Iʻa restoration or start a group in your community. You can also learn more at voiceofthesea.org. And follow us on social media at Voice of the Sea TV. Mahalo for watching Voice of the Sea. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is the dynamic curriculum developed by the University of Hawaii's Curriculum Research and Development Group. The award-winning Fluid Earth and Living Ocean textbooks are now interactive and online. New activities, updated content, and a teacher community. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is now freely available. Find out more at exploringourfluidearth.org.